Hello everyone and welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Mark. I'm a bean counting Porsche Cayman 987 owner, and my channel, Mark Up 70, is all about the drive. Today I have a buyer's guide on the 2.7 litre first generation 987 Porsche Cayman. I've owned mine since December 2020 when I bought it from Mortimer's in Billingshurst. At that time I paid $15,990 for it. It's a 2007 model year 2008 and it had 57,474 miles on the clock. And since then I've driven 12,000 miles in this. My daily commute, 4 track days. I've entered 3 auto solos in it. This guide is by no means exhaustive. It's simply what I know and what I've learned about Porsche's bargain entry point into hardtop ownership. For the avoidance of doubt and to clarify exactly what that is, here follows the press release, the spec and the options list from mid-2006 when this 2007 base model was launched. Get ready with the pause button, there's a lot to take in here. Before I get into that, if you're new here and you haven't, please do consider subscribing. If you like the video, if you find this useful, then make sure you give it the mandatory thumbs up. That really helps me out. And if you really appreciate what I do, if I have helped you with this video, please consider leaving a super thanks. There should be a new button now below the video. This video is about what I've learned, and I've learned a lot. I mean, I've got a list and everything, so I'm going to have to do this one static. So you've decided you want a 2.7 litre first generation base Cayman. You get to choose from 17 paint colours. There are 4 solid, 8 metallic and 5 special metallic. Mine's cobalt blue. Colours are quite rare though. I can illustrate that with a quick poll I took from Auto Trader earlier in the week when I looked at all of the 987s on sale. Black, silver, grey and white came to 153. Blue, red, yellow and green came to 29. So 17 out of every 20 on sale are monochrome. There are 10 different internal colours. There's 5 standard colours and 5 special natural leather colourways. Now mine's standard leather and a nice light stone grey. Again, that's quite rare, most are black. Wheel size, I'm currently on 17s. I do have 18s. You can get 19s as well. I'm not sure if you can get 20s, but they'd look ridiculous because the brakes would be lost. Tyres, N-rated, specifically as in developed by Porsche for this specific car. They're scarce if you can find them. There's only 1 or 2 options for 17s and 18s that I've seen. I'm not sure on the other sizes though. Like mine, you can get an external wiper. I've also got a factory name badge delete. You can, I think, get electric folding mirrors, but they do fold in manually if you need them. And you can also get parking sensors. Brakes at the front are 298mm on the 2.7 and they're 299 on the rear. Yes, smaller brakes on the front. How unusual is that? Now Porsche did do carbon ceramic brakes on this generation of car, but I'm not sure you can get it on the base. Centre caps is something that you can also specify. Mine are monochrome. You could pay, I think it's about 130 quid when new for a set of colour ones. They have a 64 litre tank as standard. That gives it a pretty long range. I believe to get a big tank like that now, it's actually a cost option on the latest generations. The bodies are fully galvanised, so you get 0 rust issues that I've heard of. I do have a couple of tiny spots right at the lower part of the wheel arch on the trailing edge of the tyre. Stones get flicked up. It's minor, it's surface. I've put some protection film over it. Not really concerned about that. It measures this big overall, if you want to see if it's going to fit in your garage. It's not a huge footprint. And sitting in it, it feels low. I mean, if I open the door, I'm touching the ground there. Try doing that in other cars and see how far you have to lean over. You really feel that low centre of gravity when you drive this thing. You and that flat six engine and gearbox just behind you, right with you, low, all the mass within the wheelbase. As you look out through the windscreen, you see the wings rising at the side. It feels like you're sat right between the front wheels, with your backside skimming the deck, and that induction noise right behind the seats. It feels so good. Weaknesses, now there's not too many I'm aware of, they're generally pretty robust. Front radiators, people like to put a protective mesh across the front of them in the two lower corners. Coolant pipes can fail, I think they pop off, or maybe they corrode or something, I'm not really sure. Aircon condensers can also fail, so do check that. If you get smoke out the back of the car on startup, don't be too concerned. It's very probably the air oil separator. Not a hugely expensive part, not a hugely complicated part to replace. Now on my 2.7 engine, this one's pretty solid, so there's no IMS or bore score issues, and I think that's overplayed anyway. Suspension knocks, beware of seized nuts and bolts. A 30-minute job, like swapping new drop links, can turn into 3 days. I've heard you can get oil surge on track, but I don't think that's an issue if A, you make sure you're at the right level oil-wise, and B, you run road rubber. That's generating the G-force that Porsche intended this car to generate. Oil consumption over 12,000 miles, I've topped up 4 litres in total. The oil gauge has increments, each one of those is 400 mil, so each time it drops down one, I measure out 400 mil. In it goes. Done that 10 times. Shift cables can fail, they can become detached after 70,000 miles. Mine still feels nice and tight. For a home mechanic, there are good jacking points. It's easy to get up on axle stands. Changing brakes is an absolute cinch. So long as you leave the sensors out, it's just simple stainless steel pins and R-clips, and takes, once the car's jacked up and the wheels are off, about 5 minutes each corner to swap the pads. And if you're replacing the discs, don't forget new caliper stretch bolts. That adds £20 to each axle. Interesting fun fact, the handbrake shoes on this car go back to the 1970s. They're exactly the same as used on the Porsche 924, 928 and many, many Porsches since then. So the aftermarket parts availability is strong. And as we're on the brakes, I've tried a few different discs and pads. Disc-wise, I ran what the car came with, then I went to Brembo bi-directional ones, then I tried the cheapest left and right-handed discs I could find, and I'm now running some Sebro. I'm still running Brembo discs on the rear, and I've got textile pads all round at the moment, but I drop EBC blues in for track work. And I'm running ATE Type 200 brake fluid with standard lines. There's not much servo assistance, the pedal needs a really firm press, and the pedal moves a lot when you use it. It's really progressive. The ABS isn't too intrusive, they work really well. I like them. Right, got no one behind, emergency stop. Howling all the way, but with no ABS, that's perfect. Inside, mine originally came with a CDR24 head unit with CD changer and FM radio. Porsche communications module, or PCM, was an option, but that's really not good. Think about it, it was designed years and years before the first iPhone. It's going to be clunky. Audio upgrades, you can get Sound Package Plus, which I have, which gives an amplifier in the front trunk, gives extra speakers in the door and behind the seats. And if you see Bose badges up here on the speaker grills, that means you've got fibre optic audio. I've now got an Android Auto Pioneer double DIN head unit, which I had put in January of this year. Highly recommended, just brings the car into being a bit more usable. Cruise control was an option. This stalk here, that's not something you see very often. I wouldn't expect it originally, but now that I've got it, I really, really appreciate it, and I do use it quite a lot. Extended leather, all of this could be leather, that's leather, these bits are leather across the top of the door. That was an option. Again, don't see that very much on these cars. A rare sight is the tunnel here, painted in a body colour. So that's all of this bit down here, all down here. I did look at a car that was Guards red, and this bit here was bright red. It looked wonderful. But again, these things are quite rare. Mine has standard air conditioning. Climate control was an option. The rubber on the controls, the fan and the temperature, on each side, they're rubber coated, and it does flake and pick off, and it leaves the white polymer underneath, and it looks tragic. They can be replaced. These have been replaced, and it was done before I got the car. There's YouTube guides to show you how to do it if you see a car that's got that. The parts aren't very expensive. Coloured dials were an option up here. You could specify like white, red, yellow, grey. Now I've got black because this is the base model, non-S, and the S model's got white dials. You get a nice central rev counter, digital speed below. The analog speedo on the left is really, really useless. And then you get water temperature and fuel level over on the right. Onto the seats. Now I've got the sports seats, which has got these bits here, so you get some nice shoulder support. Standard ones go narrow towards the top. You can get powered sports seats, and you can also get crests embossed up there. If you see that, that's a cost option. You can also get a crest on there if it's, I think it has to be covered in leather, but I've seen the crest on there as well. Steering wheel, mine's standard wheel, so I've got this triangular airbag. The sports steering wheel with a round airbag was a cost option. It's a nice thin rim, very tactile. It's not the quickest rack, it's about 3 and a bit turns lock to lock. What a piece of road. And of course, this is hydraulic, don't get that anymore. It's weighty and firm, but it's sharp and really, really responsive. And it's really, really feelsome. I've said this before, so if you've heard it before, apologies. But the way it feels is like you've got a chunk of tyre rubber in each hand, and you can feel whether it's static on the surface or whether it's sliding. So much comes through this rim. And then you feel through the seat and through your back what the rear tyres are up to. And to go with the well-judged steering, the pedals have the perfect feel and weight. And the shift, smooth but very mechanical. Each of the controls just perfectly matches the other. It all just feels so very, very Porsche. Cabin size is comfortable. The driving position is really, really good. Everything's properly lined up. There's no pedals off to one side or steering off at an angle. Everything's really, really well aligned. So it's not the most spacious footwell, but there's plenty of room in here. And with the luggage space front and rear, you can really load this thing up. My Focus RS had 260 litres in the boot without having to fold the seats down. My M140i had 360 litres of storage in the boot. This in the front and the rear, so without having to fold anything because there's nothing, no seats to fold, this has got 410 litres. It's surprisingly practical, especially the size of that space up front. Sports chrono was another option, which gives you the stopwatch up there. Mine's broken, the minute hand doesn't actually reset properly, but it gives a sport button down there which gives you a sharper throttle. It further relaxes the PSM, and it gives you a harder rev limiter. The sports package I also have on this car, and that is super rare, and there's a very good reason for that. The sports package gives you two things. The first is PASM, so you've got a button down there which gives you active switchable dampers, so when you press the button, the dampers go firm. Now on UK roads where I drive, sport is too firm. Even on the 17-inch tyres I'm running at the moment, it's way too hard. And the car sits 10mm lower, a PASM suspended car. So I do catch the front bumper when going onto my drive every now and then. Now on track, it's another matter entirely. Sport mode transforms the car. The second thing sports package comes with is the 6-speed manual gearbox. You get an extra cog to play with. Now comparing the 6-speed box to the 5-speed and looking at the usable revs when the engine's doing some proper work between 4,500 up to the 7,200 rev limiter, inexplicably first gear on mine compared to first gear on the 5-speed, on mine it's shorter. It doesn't even reach 40 miles an hour, which leaves a gaping chasm to the point at which second gear gets working. Now second and third gear on both boxes is broadly the same, as is top gear, 6th on mine and 5th on the 5-speed. They're pretty much identical. So here is where the two gearboxes differ. Now understandably, the 5-speed only gets one gear to bridge that gap between 3rd and 5th, whereas mine gets two between 3rd and 6th, and they're really closely stacked. You really feel that on track. The revs hardly drop in between shifts, and it always falls right back into the sweet spot. And with 6 ratios to play with, I get to change more often, and for a shift junkie like me, that's perfect. Or is it? I mentioned the rarity of the sport package, the 6-speed box on the 2.7. Why is that? Well, on the 5-speed 2.7, you're in band K for road tax, which means you pay Her Majesty's government £360 a year. The 6-speed that I've got puts it 2 grams into the next band L, just over the threshold, which means I pay a whopping £615 a year to tax this thing. What will it cost you to buy one of these cars? Well, as I said, I paid 16k for a very well optioned base Cayman on 57k, and right now in June 2022 I'd expect little change from 19 for exactly the same. But regardless of what you pay, depreciation should be minimal. If you look after it, if you get it serviced at a proper Porsche specialist or at an OPC, you should retain some of that value. Now, what will it cost to run? Well, I can help you with that because I log everything I spend, every single penny. And my total spend so far, excluding depreciation, is just shy of £8,000. But that includes a lot of consumables and track days and probably more miles than most owners will do. So if you scale that back and to just a service with a stamp in the book, litre of oil, MOT, new battery that I replaced, and the fuel for say 6,000 miles that I think is more typical of a Cayman owner, then it would come in at well under 4 grand over the year and a half and for 6,000 miles. Fuel economy is acceptable. I've got a high of 32.5 so far. I've had a low of 12.7 across the tank, and I've averaged 25.3. And the trip computer MPG is way more accurate than any car I've ever owned. This is my actual calculation from fuel purchased and the mileage covered, and the blue line is what the trip computer says. Over 12,000 miles, that's only out by 0.2%. So let's say you found the car you want. Should you go and get a pre-purchase inspection? Well, if you're buying it from a specialist, I'm not sure that's necessary. Mine came from a specialist and mine's been fine. It gets a proper workout on both road and track. Never really had an issue with this car, and I've not been gentle on it either. Over my 12k, I'm on my 4th set of discs and my 4th set of brake pads. It's driven as intended. I regularly bash the limiter. Now I know that's not big and it's not clever, but it's fun revving this thing out. When it feels this good and when it sounds as good as it does though, it's really, really hard not to do these things. Apart from the C's drop link that took a few hours to remove, the only problem I've had has been a front left creak. There's been no excess play detected though. The creak is now gone, I haven't heard it for months. The tyres are wearing even, so the alignment seems good. Apart from that minor gremlin, this car has absorbed everything I've thrown at it with ease. They're well designed, well engineered and very, very well built. And you hear and feel that when you drive this car. 70,000 miles this has got on it now, and it's still solid. One more thing. I hear this a lot. Battery trickle charger. It's a must-have. It's like almost you're not a proper owner unless you can say, yeah, here's my car, it's on trickle charge, I've got a trickle charger, I've got a C-Tech, I've got a whatever. Well, my experience with this car is no, you don't need one. This often goes for a week without me driving it. Has been 2 weeks, and it's always started just fine. The car does go to sleep after 5 or 7 days if you do nothing with it, so you won't be able to unlock it on the key, but you just simply lift up the door handle, that wakes the car up, and then you can use the key button to unlock it as normal. So how to avoid the need to have one of these chargers? Just drive it, regularly use it, put miles on it. You don't need a £150 charger. That's the point. These cars are meant to be driven. That's what they're for. I hope what I've shared with you will help you find a nice one. And when you do find one, buy one, hold on to it, and make sure you drive it. More importantly, appreciate it and enjoy it. It's a wonderfully and beautifully agile and tactile thing, which means pure driving enjoyment just happens by default. It is, after all, the Porsche Cayman 987's raison d'etre. If there's anything you're looking for that I've not answered here, then please leave a comment or question below the video, and I'll do my best to respond. Thank you very, very much for watching.